All hotel marketing activities, campaigns, initiatives aim at bringing potential customers to your website, to your hotel website, which is essentially your place in the digital world. Yet no booking happens on the website, but rather on the booking engine, which is a different tool on a different domain. Or people may decide to simply call you and you can close the deal over the phone or via email. So what is the goal of a website? And what is that make a hotel website a good website? Ultimately, other than providing people with compelling information, a good website is the one that brings the highest number of people from where they are, meaning from there, the website, onto the next step, which can be either taking a booking search, or calling you, or sending you an email, or eventually submitting a contact form request. And can you measure all that? And the answer is absolutely yes. And not only you can, but you should. And the KPI specifically is called CTR, so click-through rate. So why is this metric important? Because if you have been running any kind of activities like SEO campaigns or Google Ads campaign or Facebook campaigns or Google Hotel Ads campaigns, well, all these activities aim at bringing people, so traffic, onto your website. And if your CTR, for example, is as depressing as 15%, well, you are simply wasting money, plain and simple. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to set up CTR tracking using Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager, and how you can use this KPI in the context of your reports and dashboards. So without further ado, let's dig in. Okay, so here we are with our demo hotel website, the DYB demo hotel. I mean, you can have a look at it at any time. It's a public website, demohotel.radiobookings.com. And for the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to be splitting, we're going to have essentially two parts, all right? So two different parts of the tutorial. The first one, in the first part, we're going to set up the tracking, all right? So I said, if we want to track the CTR, so the click-through rate, we need to track essentially the people taking action, all right? So essentially clicking on something on the website. And therefore, the very first part is all about setting up the tracking. It's in theory the most technical part, yet like I said, we are not going to get into any coding part, right? So it's not going to be any difficult because via Tag Manager, Google Tag Manager, we're going to handle everything via Tag Manager, and therefore there is really no need of any technical injection onto your website. In a moment I'm going to be talking about Tag Manager just to get a little bit of a background. And in the second part of this tutorial, instead, we are going to actually get that data, right? So we have the tracking in place, and now how do we use it? So in the second part, we're going to take that numbers, that figures, that tracking, and we're going to pull those numbers out and publish them into either a report or a dashboard, or anyway, visually speaking, we're going to represent those numbers in the context of analytics or probably Google Data Studio or any other platform or data visualization tool. All right, that's it. So let's get started. Now I've already anticipated that we are going to deploy the tracking using Google Tag Manager. Now, as you know, if you know me or if you have followed some of my previous other videos or courses about Google Analytics, I always recommend and suggest working and deploying every tracking using Google Tag Manager or any other tag manager, but anyway, Google Tag Manager, because we're anyway in the context of Google. And the reason, I'm not getting too much into details for now because this is not a tutorial on Tag Manager. However, Tag Manager, I think I mentioned probably something like 1,000 different reasons why Tag Manager is so much powerful, and you should be working with Tag Manager too, rather than injecting the code directly, the Google Analytics code into the website. And one of the reasons is just what I said before. We can set up this kind of customization with Tag Manager without knowing anything about tracking codes. Using a metaphor, Tag Manager is like a WordPress for website or Joomla for website, right? So with those CMS, you can create website without knowing how to build website, right? So content management system, Tag Manager, Google Tag Manager, there is not actually a real acronym to define that, but it can be a sort of tag management system, right? Or something like that, meaning that you can deploy many tracking codes without really knowing trackings. That said, you can do the exact same thing even with Google Analytics direct code injection on your website, It's just that, like I said, every single customization, and what we're about to do is a customization, every single customization without a tag manager requires a code injection on your website, and therefore it might involve, webmasters, web agencies, and therefore cost probably. And that's why I said at the very beginning, this is going to be free. There is no technical knowledge required, and I'm going to stick to it. So let's get started with Google Tag Manager. I have already created a tag manager. By the way, this tag manager is already installed on our website, right? So there is nothing in terms of, groundwork that I need to do. If you don't know about Tag Manager, you can simply check. There's so many tutorials out there on how to get started with Google Tag Manager, but it's very simple. Just get and head to tagmanager.google.com, and then you simply create a container. A container will respond with a code, a Google Tag Manager code, which starts with GTM and then a sort of custom numbers, alphanumeric code, and that is your Google Tag Manager container ID. This is the screenshot, sorry, not the screen, the pop-up that you will be seeing after creating the first container. It will take literally 30 seconds to create a container, up to 1 minute maximum. And these are the codes that you need to essentially copy paste as is, respectively in the head and in the body of your website. When done, Tag Manager is up and running. All right? It's literally that simple. Now, for the purpose of this tutorial, be sure that you have, and if you want to do the same, be sure to have a Tag Manager installed on your website, not necessarily on your booking engine. All right. So if you don't have Google Tag Manager installed on your booking engine, is fine, because we are tracking CTAs here on the website, and therefore there is no need essentially of having Tag Manager installed on the booking engine too. All right. So let's get started. So here is the website. As I said, we want to track the CTAs. So any action that we might want people to take, users to take. Now, of course, the most powerful and the strongest call to action that we might have on any other website is the button that points people from the website to the booking engine, right? It's either, besides the label is not important, so check availability. Most of the times you see book now button instead rather than check availability. But anyway, either this button that points to the booking engine, most of the time, well, not most of the time, sometimes you might have a situation, or your website might not have a single click or a simple button pointed to the booking engine, but you might have an entire form, right? So where people, it's called a quick search form. Usually quick search form is essentially a form where people enter their booking criteria. So arrival, departure date, number of adults and number of children. And therefore, by filling up those fields, well, the booking engine then returns automatically and directly all available results, depending specifically for those booking search criteria. Now, in this case, we have a simpler solution because we just have a button. All right, so nothing more than that. In a moment, later on, eventually, I'm going to be showing you how to track also the, the other stuff, so the form. So, but now let's start with simple. This is the easiest one. Just have a button, check availability button. We want to track people clicking on this button. So how to do it? So first, let's move on to Tag Manager. This is a very empty container, so we need to start from scratch. So the very first thing, we need to set up a tag. Again, this is not a tutorial about Tag Manager, so I'm assuming you know a little bit about Tag Manager, at least how it is structured. If not, there are so many tutorials out there, but it's super easy and super self-explanatory. A tag is nothing more but essentially a tracking. So what do we want to do? We want to send a tracking code. And in the context of Tag Manager, tags, that's what they are for. So what kind of tag we want to send? It's Google Analytics, of course. Now you will find multiple options. However, we are going to be using Universal Analytics. As you know, recently, well, actually, I think around 1 year ago, because Google Analytics 4 is quite old, but anyway, was kind of launched with the brain of Google Analytics 4 something like 1 year ago. Yet it's still in its beta version, right? So Google Analytics 4, it is very powerful. Potentially, it is way, way, way better than even Universal Analytics, which is 99% the legacy version that you have been using for tracking on your website and booking engine. However, since for the time being GA is still in beta, many hoteliers and many corporations and organizations are not necessarily familiar with GA4. So let's stick with Google Analytics Universal Analytics. All right, so let's just stick with it. Now, if we select Google Analytics Google Analytics Universal Analytics, then we have multiple options. So what kind of thing do we want to track with these tags? So we may want to track a page view, is the easiest one. So every single page people visit, that is what this track type is for. In our case, we are simply going to use a sort of generic track type, which is event. So we want to send an event over to Google Analytics every time people click on this button, check availability button. All right. So we send an event. Now, when you set up event, you will see that also a bunch of parameters underneath will change. And here, what do? We can send any kind of value. Now, probably this will make much more sense after we send this. But for the very time being, I'm just going to enter what I use as usually naming convention when it comes to tracking call to actions on any hotel website. So event category, I just want to track a click. Category is very generic. Click can be anything. It can be click here, click on the, for example, if you go on the footer, for example, I have the telephone number, I have an email address, any click potentially. So, and that's why I want to categorize it that way. However, I differentiate this click using an event action. And in this case, I just call it IB to make it simple. So category click and action IB. All right, so Internet Booking Engine IB. And that's literally it. So essentially, I'm setting up a tracking code, an event tracking, sending over to Google Analytics a tracking category with value click and an action with IB. All right. Now, that's really it in terms of tag setup. So I just give it a name, Google Analytics, click, and then IB. All right, so this is the tag that I would recognize as the one recording the clicks to the check availability button. Now, the tag is set up, and now the trigger is the activator. All right, what is the condition that will activate, that will make this tag fire? And if you think about it, what is that activates this event is the click, all right, on the check availability button. Now, if I go in here, triggering option, there are already a bunch of, pre-built, built-in variable. However, there is one that is not necessarily included, which is, well, we have links, but there is something missing because here links, I can select all links, but then there is something missing because I want to track specifically this information here, this check availability button. Now, let me get out a little moment because I need to activate something that I didn't do before. So let me also close this one, discard changes, and we're going to be doing that from scratch again. So variables, I want to activate something that is already in Tag Manager, but not activated by default. Since we want to track clicks now, as a bunch of variables, built-in variables, we have clicks. And what do you want to track about the clicks? What do you want Tag Manager to listen or to grab from the click? You can track what element is being clicked, the class, so the CSS class, the click ID, so the CSS ID, the element ID within the HTML, in an HTML context. So another thing could be, for example, the click URL, and that's exactly what we're going to be using. All right, because what we want to do is to track any link, and this is a link, that points to a specific URL. Therefore, in Tag Manager, we want to have this option activated, clicks, click URL. As a matter of fact, if I mouse hover over this check availability button, you will see in the bottom left, on the bottom left of my screen, the preview of what is the link that it will open up if I click on that. All right. So, and if you can see, it's ib.hoteliers.guru. That is the domain or the subdomain of the booking engine. And this is exactly what we're going to be using in a moment. So let's get back and let's set up our tag now. Let's click on new. Google Analytics, Universal Analytics. Again, it's not a page view, but we want to send an event. Event category, click, event action IB. I mean, it can be random, you can put whatever you want. Now let me give it a name, Google Analytics. Click, and then IB, so Internet Booking Engine. And now in the triggers, so what is that activates this tag? We click on new trigger and we create a click trigger. All elements, no, just links. We just go for links. And what do you want? All links, every single link. If I will leave it like that, even people clicking on every single link within the page will activate that event. This is not something that we want, because we want to activate that tag specifically on links. On links whose URL behind that link is specifically the booking engine domain. All right. So let me get back here. Some link clicks. And then finally I have, you see, these built-in variables that before it was not there. I can use this filter, this information as a filter to include only click URL that contain, and then the URL domain of the booking engine, which I don't remember, is ibe.hoteliers.guru. You see, the booking engine, the URL is way longer, but you can stick to simply the main domain or subdomain and not and anything else, so you can leave it out. Again, I forgot. What is it? Hoteliers.guru. Okay. Hoteliers.guru. Okay, so we have created our trigger. Let's give it a name and let's call it click IB. All right, so this is our tag. So we have instructed Tag Manager to send an event with category click and action IB whenever people click on links whose URL is the booking engine domain. Of course, you will need to change it respectively to yours, and that's really it. Now, of course, I have missed something very important, which is the Google Analytics account. Now, it's very easy because I have already created a variable. Now, if you don't have, now Google Analytics, let's move to Google Analytics. It's just your Google Analytics code. Now, if this is your Google Analytics account, this is just a demo, the demo test account of this website, all right? So if you just have a Google Analytics, go under the admin section, admin panel, property settings, it's actually this code here. If you want to copy, you go into property settings, and then you will see it in here, you copy, and that's the code that you will need to place in Tag Manager, all right? And you usually do it by using a variable. I have already done it, so the GA code. If you don't have it, just use a script. You just click a new variable, and here you can create the tracking ID, and you place the code. Simple as that. And in this case, I cancel it because I said I already have it, GA code, and that's really it. Now we have set up the tracking. Let's give it a try. All right. So meaning that we are going to test it before setting that live. Maybe we have made a mistake. Always test. And the way you do it is by clicking the preview mode of Google Tag Manager. It will open a new window. And so let me first copy the URL. It will open a new window. And in this window, you will need to paste the URL of your website. So the home page in that sense is more than enough. And then you click connect. In a few seconds, it will open another page, which is just a copy of your website, but in preview mode. And preview mode you recognize because you will see this prompt, this window, this pop-up eventually showing up, which is nothing but just confirmation that you are viewing this page as part of the preview mode of Google Tag Manager. You can simply reduce this one, move on whatsoever. That is not important. However, what is that makes this page different as the preview mode as a normal page, right? It's just that now you can see everything that I do in here in this preview window. Like let's test it right away. We want to track the check availability clicks. So I'm going to do it, and by do it, I'm just hitting the command button on my Mac. If you are on Windows, just hit the control button and then click, because it will open on a new page, but then you can close that one, and you can move back to the preview mode. And as you can see now, we have this event here. This is the payload list of essentially all the list of events that may happen on a web page. and includes a whole bunch of stuff which are provided by default, like container loaded, so the Google Tag Manager loaded, and then the Windows, so the website is fully loaded, and a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not going to get into them, but however, since we are in the context of tracking clicks or links, so we just see that now after I clicked on that one, on that link, now I have, after clicking on this, and now I have this event in here. And if you see that, tags fired, under tags fired, we have our tag that we previously created, the Google Analytics Click IB. If you open it, you will also see what is actually that makes it fire, all right? So the firing triggers. This is a little bit tacky sometimes, but you can see that, for example, the Click IB, the filters used is that it contains IBE hoteliers.guru, all right? And we can go now back to Google Analytics in our real-time area, events, and we should be able to see the real-time event that has been fired. So event category, an event which which value is click, and an event action whose value is IB. This is exactly what we set up in our tag configuration here. And that is perfect. So this is working. So nothing else that we need to do for now. We're going to get back probably later on just to see how to track something else. But for now, so this is saved. Remember, always remember that when after testing everything that you want to test, so after setting up everything that you want to do, and before closing everything, always remember to hit the submit button, because the submit will essentially publish all the changes live, and therefore everyone from now on will be able to see and will be able to, discover actually all the changes that you have applied will be publicly visible. All right. So that's really it. As you can see, it's really simple, and we didn't do anything that was techy. All right. So it's just a pure tag, and we simply used the built-in power of the click possibility, so the click triggers options provided by Google Tag Manager to set up the tracking. Without the Google Tag Manager, instead, you would have, as said, to inject a piece of code directly within the click function within the page. And of course, it would have required someone else, probably a webmaster or web agents or anyway a developer to do that. And of course, it would have cost you some money. Now, we have already seen here in preview mode. Now, how do we make use of this? This is the very first part, right? So now we have set up the tracking. Now let's move on to the second part, which is, okay, how do we make use of this information? How do we structure this information, this tracking, into the context of Google Analytics? In other words, how do we see it? Where do we see it? And I have already opened this page, which is essentially is the same hotel, though it's another window, and it's actually another account, by the way. But it's simply because in this account I already have a whole bunch of numbers and tracking going on, all right? And therefore I can already see some numbers related to those check availability clicks. Now, events. Now we set up an event tracking in Google Tag Manager. Events within Google Analytics are listed. Usually you can add to behavior events, and then in here you may see a whole bunch of events. So if you go into the overview area, overview part, you will see a whole bunch of, again, event category. And as you can see, we also have this one, which is click. The click is the one that we set up before. Now, why click is very generic, because as said before, we may have many different call to action that we won't want to track related to clicks, like check availability click, or clicks, for example, on other call to action, like here there is another one, or the view offer may be another one pointing to the booking engine, or for example, the telephone number, or the email address, or again, this is slightly different because it's not a click, it's a form. We'll see that later on. But you see, there are many possible clicks, and I like the idea of combining them all together under the category, event category click, And then I use the action, for example, as a further, labeling options, so that I can use, for example, IB, add to cart, click on the purchase. In this case, no, this is this is just a demo. Probably this will not make sense, but these values here may be a little bit new to you, or anyway, not much familiar with them. But you can see we have this event action IB. So event category, click, event action IB, just like what we set up in the context of Google Tag Manager. Category click and action IB. Now, there are this here, you can already see the number of events, right? Total events. However, for example, it's going to be better if we're going to be using the number of session, because if I click again on this link, I will be tracking another event. So in this context, Google Analytics will report as many clicks I will have. There are multiple ways to limit it, even within Tag Manager. However, the point is that we simply want to see and to differentiate sessions that either reported a click or not, a click on the check availability or not. So session in which users click on that button, even if they click 10 times, it doesn't really matter. We just want to count one, as opposed to sessions in which users did not click on that button at all, that click or any other button at all. All right. And therefore, in order to do that, here you see there is no session, the metric session listed in here, and there is no way to amend it. And the only option that we have is by using a custom report. All right. So if you head into customization, custom report, and it's very easy. You simply go there and you create a new custom report. And when you can do so, let's call it, for example, CTR. We want to see what kind of metric do we want to see. We just talk about sessions. So we want to see how many sessions. And then here, dimension. Dimension is exactly, event category is a dimension. Event action is a dimension. So let's directly use event action. And already by doing so, we are going to see only the session which have event action. But as we have seen before, we have multiple values. Therefore, we're going to be using eventually a filter. And we're going to see, and we're going to instruct analytics to simply include sessions that have reported an event action being equal to IB. And let's save it. And there it is. All right. So we have the number of event action, which is again what we set up in Google Tag Manager, IB, and this is the total number of sessions that included or that had a hit with an event action, which value is IB. And already here you have a CTR, because if you look into this, probably is a little bit smaller on video, but as you can see, 815 in this given period, meaning 815 sessions out of 3,159 had a click on the button, on that button, corresponding to 25%, 25.80%. This is already our CTR, right? So you see how easy it is. And by the way, this is a custom report. Being custom, you can further modify the way you want. All right, so for example, you don't want to see the event action as I mentioned. You might want to drill down by, for example, device category. So we want to see the split, for example, based on the device category, so either mobile, desktop, or tablet, and there it is. You see how easy it is, and it's automatic. All right, so you see still the number of total session with hit IB, event action IB is the same, or of course narrowed down by device category. What else? I mean, you can even put whatever you want. Of course, you can put as many metrics as you want. Actually, there is a limit of, I think, 12. I actually don't recall how many you can put. But let's say, okay, transactions that you might want to see, users, and then you might want to see, let's get into the practical side. So transactions, revenue, and conversion rate, which is always e-commerce conversion rate. And let's see by saving it this way, and you see here is a custom report with a whole bunch of stuff. very useful. And you can simply take this one and actually either export, or you can even share with someone else, or you can even schedule the automatic email or delivering of this report to your inbox on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, weekly basis, as you wish. It's super easy. However, yet we are talking about the visualizing data. This could be enough, and you can already stop here. However, we can even go further. And the point is that Analytics, Google Analytics, is the tool that we have been using to track this information. However, there is another tool which is always in the context of Google, which is Google Data Studio, that is the perfect place or the perfect tool for you to take this data and visualize it in a way better way. All right. So essentially, analytics is anyway just a tracking tool, and you can already visualize a bunch of reports in here. However, Data Studio, in terms of data visualization, is way more powerful. It's automatically connectable to Google Analytics. All right, this is just a demo dashboard. It's exactly the same hotel. Is the dashboard of this hotel already connected to the Google Analytics account of this hotel? All right, so everything is just fine. The same number that you see in here are the numbers that you will see in Google Analytics. If you're not familiar with Data Studio, similar to Google Tag Manager, this is not a tutorial about Data Studio. However, it's so self-explanatory, so easy, so straightforward. I just head to datastudio.google.com. You open up a dashboard, an account. I mean, considering and assuming that you have access at least to your Google Analytics account. With that same account, you head to this URL, all right? So datastudio.google.com. You open a new dashboard. You can also find templates, all right? So you don't have to build a dashboard from scratch, but you can simply take, one of the provided one by default. There, everything for free. You simply follow the instruction to connect in 3 easy steps your Google Analytics account to Google Analytics, to Google Data Studio. And that's really it. Even if you have never heard about Data Studio before, from here to here, it will literally take 3 minutes, all right? the most important variable probably is your how fast is your internet connection. So I'm really it's really that simple, all right? So I'm not gonna dig into it. However, this is just a demo dashboard already connected to the Google Analytics account of this hotel, and we just want to pull out some information in here as well, all right? So like, for example, you remember I mentioned before the number of sessions, 3,159. Total number of sessions before is here, 3,159. So you see it's the same account, same hotel, all right? So it's just connect and you take it and that's it. Now, you see here I left an empty spot because that is where I want to pull out the, and I want to publish my CTR, all right? So I want to have it as a scorecard. And I want to have it always in here because I want to have my main KPIs in here. This is usually a standard report in which I always have on the top a bunch of scorecards, which potentially are the most important ones, the one that I always want to have in the first place, the very first scorecard and KPIs and metrics that I want to see whenever I open up a dashboard, all right? Meaning talking about users, a session, and of course I want to see, for example, the CTR. CTR, again, it measures the effectiveness of the website. So how do we do it? Because now becomes a little bit more, not difficult, but a little bit slightly different, all right, as opposed to Google Analytics. Now, let's first start by pulling and by publishing a new scorecard. At a chart, I just take a scorecard, which is just like the ones that you are looking at right now, all right? So as you can see, everything is so self-explanatory. Now, you see the data source is my demo hotel, so the Google Analytics account that I have already connected. And now it tells me, okay, what kind of metric do you want? And in this case, I just want sessions, all right? So I just take, where is it? Sessions, and there it is. And I just have a sort of duplicates of this. Now, the other thing that we want to do is I just copy paste this one or create a new scorecard. But what I want to do is similar to what we did before here, where we, let me get back into the edit mode, where we created this filter. This same functionality is available in Data Studio as well. And it's in here. If we scroll down, add a filter, Now there is no filter already pre-created, so we're going to simply create it. How is it? We want to include the event action that equals to IBE. Now let's give it a name. Simply call it event action equal quotes IBE, and let's save it. All right, 815. Now you see that we are having the exact same number that we used to have before in Google Analytics. So let me move back. Let me just remove a whole bunch of stuff because I just want to see the event action. Save. All right, A15. All right, same as before. A15 sessions with AB, 3,159, the total number of sessions, the same numbers. Now, here's a good thing about Data Studio, something that is probably many people don't know, but it's a super powerful feature of Data Studio that opens up a whole bunch of new possibilities. Now, this feature is called data blending. All right, and look at what I'm better showing you actually how it works rather than explaining how it works, because literally you will understand way better as of the very moment that you will see how it works. So I select both of these core cards, all right. So, and you do it by either click on the first one and then you press the command button or control button, and then you click on the second one. Now they're both selected. When they're selected, right click, and then at the very end you will see this option, blend the data. And look what happens when I do it. Automatically Google Data Studio creates a new scorecard, all right, which is a sort of combination. It automatically applies a sort of calculation between these two values, 3,159 and 115. And what is that? So first of all, you see the data source is no longer Google Analytics. So if I click in here, you will see that this is the DYB demo UA Universal Analytics, same as here. However, this is different. It's called blended data. So let's open it and let's see how it works. So this one is a blended data. Blended data is simply the possibility within Data Studio to kind of merge different data sources on different data sets. Like we can even merge, for example, data coming from Google Ads with data coming from Facebook Ads, for example. Or you can merge the data from Google Analytics with data coming from Google Sheets, for example, if you have a Google Sheet. From SQL, if you have a PMS connected to a SQL database, you can even import SQL database, and that's going to be super powerful if you have data, for example, from the PMS or the CRS to combine with data from the Google Analytics account. Now, of course, again, this is not a tutorial on data blending, but this is how it works. All right, and you can see we have two data sets or two data sources. They're exactly the same, analytics. However, this second one has a filter attached. So in the context of Google Data Studio, a data set is essentially everything included filters, all right? So even these two data sources are exactly the same, but the data sets are different because the second one includes a filter, and therefore they're recognized as a different data set, all right? Now you have these two values which are exactly the same, session and session. So in order not to make a confusion, I'm just going to click on this and I'm just going to recall sessions with IB, because this is this value here that comes from Google Analytics, but always with the filter applied to include only event action equal IB, right? So, and since we're going to be using these two metrics, I want to, well, actually simply differentiate between one and another. And that's really it. Now let's save it. All right, now it recomputes everything. Now you might be wondering, what is this value? It doesn't make any sense. You're right. Actually, sorry, let me just get back and I want to rename this one, data one, Google Analytics, so that it doesn't make more sense also in terms of labeling. All right, close. All right, so now we have our our scorecard, our new scorecard, which is a sort of combination of these two. And you might wonder, okay, but what is this value? Does it make any sense? It doesn't make any sense. And actually, you are right, but for the very simple reason that automatically Google Data Studio have swapped the values, all right? Simply because this was the session, meaning this scorecard was the first that we selected, and the second one was the second one that we selected. What we need to do is to simply change the order. So the first one becomes sessions with IB. It might look like a weird formula. This is because it is a SQL formula, all right? So SQL. But again, there is nothing more that you need to do other than this. So just sum session IB divided by sum equals sessions. So in other words, we are taking sessions with IB, which is this one, 815, divide by sessions, a total number of 8. And that's going to be your CTR. And there it is, 25.80. You see how easy it is. And now that we have it, let's also recall it, because it's not session divided by session, but let's just call it CTR website IB, or even just CTR, but okay, it's just to differentiate website IB. Apply. And then I can place it in here. It's not the same look and feel, but who cares? So that doesn't really matter. But you see how it works. And now we have it. And now I can delete it too, because I don't need them anymore. You see how it works. That is the principle. But again, that's not it. Same as before. We can create multiple custom reports or dashboards or pie charts or time charts, whatever you want. You can create literally whatever you want. If you open the chart possibility here, well, good. I mean, enjoy, really, because there are so many options. Now, let's do something similar as we did before. So let's create a table. Let's already make it a little bit bigger. By default, this is already going to take, no, it didn't do it. So I need to change the, where is it? The blended data. So I need to change the data source. All right. So we already have the sessions with AB. I can put another one, for example, here, and already have, all right, the sessions on one side and the session with AB on the other side. What is the dimension? We didn't select anything, and we don't have options because we just have these two values, because these are the only two fields that populated the data source. So same as we did before, we might want to add some other dimension or filter, like not filter, some other dimension. So dimensions are essentially like, as we did before, like device category or count of sessions or countries. So let's do it together. Let's do and select a join key, not a dimension, but a join key. And in a moment, I'm going to tell you why. Device category, same as before. So why I am using this as a join key? Because that's the principle of blended data in Data Studio. Join key is what you put, is what that you consider is the common denominator. Let's put it this way, all right? So what you can use in the context of Data Studio to connect the first source and the second source. All right, and since this is the exact same data source, all right, we can use the exact same dimension as a join key. All right, and now we can use that dimension in our report. All right, so if you click Save and then we close, now you see that we have the device category as a possible dimension that we can make use in our report. As a matter of fact, I drag and drop, and now we have, let me just enlarge, and now we have our report that reports the split by the split of sessions and sessions with IBE, the split by device category, so desktop, mobile, and tablet. Now let me just style a little bit, because I want to show, for example, the summary row at the very end. And then what else? Let me just style it a little bit. I don't want to also change the color. I don't want it blue, I want it orange. In the context of Google Analytics, probably a little bit better. And this one, wrap text. Okay, that's pretty much all. Let's make it probably a little bit bigger. So instead of 12, let's do 14. Okay, now it's a little bit bigger, so probably we can see it even better. All right, so that's really it. And let me see, style. I also want to row numbers. It doesn't really matter for now. Okay, Good. Now, you might be wondering, but yeah, but this is not any different than Google Analytics, so why am I doing this? So first of all, for this, because I want to have a single scorecard next to all other main KPIs or metrics. So I really like the idea in Google Data Studio that I can customize this top bar, in my opinion. By the way, you can move it the way you want to, wherever you want within the page, so it's totally flexible, this tool. And but that's not only it, because the point is that in Google Data Studio you can literally create as many metrics as you want based, or let's say compute as many metrics as you want based on the values that you already have. So for example, because I understand that sometimes it might sound a little bit complicated, it's better to simply show them. First of all, I'm distributing the columns. Now let's say, for example, that we have the number of sessions, we have the number of sessions with IB. Maybe, simple as that, we want to compute also the number or let's put it this way, let's compute the CTR, so this same value, but split for each and every device category, right? And simple, it's very simple. Now you select this one, so you select the table, you add a metric. There is no metric because the CTR website, so these calculated metrics are available at a report level, so we need to create a new one. So create a new field, and we just call it the CTR again, website IB. And here we just do the formula same as before, sessions with IB divided by sessions. Now we just need to change the type from, here I forgot the sum. We just need to change the type from number to percent, and that is it. You see here, we have now the split by device category. So again, same as before, let me just recycle and distribute evenly. So we have a better visibility onto it. And already here, maybe let's go in view mode. And now we have these values here that already tell us a little bit something. All right. So we can see that the 25% is not super good, is a decent CTR website IB. At least it's not as bad as many other hotels that I've seen many times. However, if we split, we dig into a little bit more details in terms of where exactly we are losing business opportunities. Now, tablet is quite normal, that is very low. 20% CTR on mobile device, well, it's not even that bad. Desktop usually is way better. This is pretty normal stuff in the sense that desktop, I mean, consider the logic. People might want to start a booking search on mobile devices, or at least landing on a page, maybe from your Google Ads campaign or your Google or even Facebook campaigns, or even organically. And then from mobile, they don't jump onto the booking engine, being the very first session, and then they may come back at a later stage to perform a better booking search using a desktop device, simply because a desktop is larger, is bigger, is more comfortable, especially when it comes to comparing multiple rates and so on and so forth. So that's quite normal. But we can even go more and further than that, because now we have this, we narrow down by details, so by device category. But we can go even further. So for example, let's assume that we want to have, okay, we have the number of sessions. We have the number of sessions with IB. So what's the difference? Meaning the number of sessions without IB. Pure simple math. This minus this. Well, let's do it. I'm just doing it simply because I want to show you how easy it is when you really get to understand how this whole thing works within Google Data Studio. So sessions without IB, and the formula sum sessions minus sum sessions minus sessions with IB. Apply. And there it is. Again, let's distribute evenly, and there we have it. All right. So this many number of sessions, this many number of sessions with a B, this one number of sessions without a B, right? So now at this very moment, you get the point. I'm not going to compute actually the difference between sessions with a B and session without a B in percentage, but you get the point. And now that you have this, well, you can add as many metrics as you want, even the normal one, like transaction, same as we did before. Transaction you cannot say because we didn't add it to the blended data. So to the data source, you take the first one, which is the one that computes the old number of sessions, and you simply add the new metric. So transactions, and then you may add, well, stick to e-commerce conversion rate. I just simply want to recall, I never like e-commerce conversion rate in the context of hotels because it's just conversion rate. So I just rename it, save it, close, and then I have them available in here. So let's transaction and conversion rate, we just set them up. So let's pull them into the report. Let's say conversion rate. Again, let's distribute evenly so we had a report that also looks a little bit better. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The only thing is about the conversion rate. You see, it's not really also, well, the conversion rate is not making the average, but it's summing them up. So we can quickly change it by simply clicking here, and instead of the aggregation sum, we simply change the aggregation model to average. And then we have the average conversion rate. All right, you see, that is super easy. But again, now look how simple. You want to change the dimension. So no more device category, but for example, same as we did before, the count of session, which is a dimension that I very much like, and it really tells me a lot. So I just copy, so Command C, Command V, or Control C, Control V, simply copy paste a new report. It's just going to be a little copy paste of the previous report. Now in this sense, we just make another change in the data source and the blended data source, because no more, or sorry, not only device category, but we want to add another join key, which is going to be, for example, what did we say? A count of session, count of sessions. Save it. All right, and now we just drag and drop into the dimension field. We can even combine them both, all right? So now we have a count of session 1. Let's go in view mode. Now we have these two reports. The first one showing the split by device category, and the second one showing the split by count of sessions. So count of session, if you don't know, is people having the first session of their booking journey. Actually, whatever the people visit, essentially count of session 1 counts all first-time visitors. And then the count of session 2 is people returning for the second time, third time, fourth time, or whatsoever. Now, you see, it's pretty cool actually to look into the narrow part when you drill down by these dimensions, because you can really see what happens in details. Like in this context, we're counting the number of sessions. It's pretty normal that people, when first land the website, they click on the book now button, like at least a good part of them click on the check availability button, because they might want to see what your rates are. Maybe they have seen you on the OTAs, and maybe now they just want to compare with your direct price. All right, so that's pretty normal. It's also quite normal that if they decide to come back, maybe they do not necessarily check the availabilities again, because they're still in their discovery phase. And then, as you see in here, maybe step number 4 or 5, like in this case, it's a huge peak, or anyway, a relevant peak in terms of CTR, meaning people in their 5th session definitely deciding to making a booking, all right? And you can compare this, you can see that this make much sense also from a data standpoint, not only from a CTR standpoint, but also the conversion rate standpoint. So we'll see that normally the conversion rate on count of session number 1 is totally low. It's very, 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 very little. And it's totally normal, of course, because you don't walk into a bar asking a complete stranger to marry you. it's the same as people and potential customers landing on your website and still being in their discovery phase and not wanting to convert right away. So they need the time. So how can you use this information? Well, you see that, for example, people are converting quite better when it comes to the third session, and the third session, especially second and third session, are converting way better. So you either have two choices. You either push for people to make some sort of call to action in here, all right? So in the very first visit. However, usually I do not recommend it. Actually, I never recommend it because I tend to respect the timing, the time needed by prospects in order to take a decision. I mean, especially in the hotel industry, we're very good at pushing. We push. We kind of claim people to take action and to make a booking right away. Whilst, especially in these post-pandemic times, it is true that the booking window, the search window has shrunk. Actually, both booking window and search window has shrunk, meaning they're getting shorter and shorter. However, the number of interaction, meaning the count of sessions, may have increased, and actually quite relevantly. So it's quite important to actually look into these numbers. But you see the point. This is how you do it. All right. So that's really it. However, I mentioned before, the check availability is just one. All right. So it's just the most important call to action, or the strongest call to action. But for example, let's assume that you don't have a button, but you have a form. Like, let's go check. I think, where did I see? I think this is the hotel I was looking at this morning. Let me see. Yeah, you see, this hotel doesn't have a button to the booking engine, but they have a form. Now, this is slightly more techy. I'm going to be showing you how to do that. Slightly in the sense that there is anyway no code part that you need to do, but you need to look a little bit into the code. Now, what you do instead, now let me first show you Google Tag Manager, right? When it comes to triggers, you have the options to select clicks, or clicks are the ones that we selected before, but you also have many other options. And one of the other options is, for example, this one, form submission. Now, technically speaking, a quick research form is a form, all right? So technically speaking, from an HTML standpoint, this widget here, this form, is a form, meaning that HTML comes with a form, meaning when they click on check availability, it's like submitting a form. Like a contact form is a form. So when people submit a contact form, well, they're submitting a form. I'm sorry, it may sound confusing, but that's really it. Even if what they see next is totally different, but it's anyway a form. So it's a form submission. And Google Tag Manager has this trigger, form submission. So this is exactly what we're going to be using. However, same as we did before, we need to activate a built-in variable, all right? And before, in the context of the button, we activated a click URL, meaning that we want to enable Tag Manager to read the URL that stands behind the click, right? Same or very similar, we can instruct the Tag Manager to listen to specific element of the form that people submit, right? In this very context, more likely what you're going to be using is the form ID. You see that there is a URL, but usually a form doesn't come with a URL, and especially the contact form, and especially the check availability form. They come with ID, classes, or specific elements or attributes within the HTML part of it. So in the context of this tutorial, I'm just going to be using the form ID, and I'm going to be showing you how to work with that. Most of the times, actually almost every single time, if you don't have it, is a little bit of a weird thing, but most of the time, so whenever you run into a form like this that we're seeing here, they come with a unique ID, all right? An ID is a unique identifier, all right? Something that only that form has, all right? A value that only that form has. And how can you do it? Now, in Chrome, but it's the same thing in Firefox, you can right-click on any part of the form, and then you click Inspect. And yes, here it might sound a little bit tacky. No worry, you don't need to touch anything, but you just need to read a little bit more, going up and up and up and up and up until you see There it is, the form. All right. So until you see HTML, this is an HTML tag, and the tag is a form. And most of the times, forms come with ID, classes, and so ever. However, class, so these are CSS selector. A class may be the same across multiple elements, whilst IDs usually are unique, meaning that cannot be other other elements within the page that have the same ID. So what you do in this case, you just take this value here, in this case is search bar form, and then you use it in your context. All right, so you use it in Tag Manager. Now, I'm not using this one because, of course, I don't have access to this hotel website, but I'm going to use our hotel website, demo hotel website. I don't have a search form, but I have, for example, a newsletter form, which is the same. Again, if I right-click on this and then I go into the inspect option, if I go up and up and up and up and up, boop, I see the form. All right. So again, HTML form is the same. And look at this. I have an ID. This is the one that I'm going to be using. I take this one, I copy paste this value. In this case, it's newsletter. And then back to Google Tag Manager. So let's start with the tag, same as we did before. I'm going to click new. Or let's put it this way. I'm just going to use this one rather than creating one from scratch. You take the previous one and you copy it. So why do I have to create something from scratch when I can simply copy the one that I already have created before? Quick form, sorry, this is not auto click, but quick search form. Well, you call it the way you want. Form and IVE can be the same, all right? So in this case, we are just changing the category from click, because people are not clicking a button, but they're submitting a form, and then we can take action. We can change it or we can leave it the same. Depends how you want to structure your reports. But in this case, I leave it the same. And in that sense, the trigger is no longer going to be a click, but it's going to be something new. And it's going to be the form submission that we have seen before, right? Form submission. All form submission, no, we want to track only the form that has an ID to be equal or contain. In that sense, it's newsletter. In the sense of the previous hotel that we searched, it was something different. I actually don't remember. Now, in this case, it's a newsletter, so I'm going to recall it newsletter form or whatever. But you see the point. This is how you activate the same click tracking or form submission tracking, same as we did before with this button, but on forms. And when you have a quick research form, so when you ask people to submit arrival date, departure date, number of adults and children, that is a form, and that is how you track it. All right. So that is really it. But let me discuss this because I don't have a form in this case. Or well, let me put it this way. Let's stay here. Form newsletter. So let's track everything that represents a call to action in our page. So we have a newsletter. This form, we want to track submission to this form. So for Google Analytics form newsletter, this is a form, and this is no longer IB, but newsletter plus form submission, some form ID. Sorry if I go fast, but of course it's taking a lot of time, this tutorial. Yeah, form newsletter, and then save. I'm not gonna do that because you got the point, all right? So I'm not gonna test it, but let's see what else can we track. We can track people, actually these two clicks, meaning people clicking on a telephone number, which will prompt in this case a Skype, because I have Skype as my preferred VoIP calling tool. And therefore, but I mean, it can be any other tool that you might have installed on your computer. But anyway, I want to track clicks on telephone numbers. And as you can see from the preview in the bottom left of my screen, you can already see that even if you have multiple telephone numbers, meaning multiple different numbers, well, you might simply track all clicks that starts or that begins or that contains tel and then the numbers. All right, so this, in this very context, we just go, for example, into copying the existing tag, because again, we don't want to create anything from scratch. Telephone, click, tel, or phone, or whatever, I mean, just call it phone. And then, of course, the trigger is no longer be a click IB, but we just need to create a new one, click phone, just links, all links, no, some links, whose URL contains tag. You see how easy? And then we can create another one, not a new one, sorry, but we can create another one for the mail. So we can already prepare mail, click category, sorry, event category, we'll leave it there. This is going to be mail. So what is going to be the trigger? Again, is another click. Sorry if I'm going very fast, but again, I think you got the point. Click mail, just links, some links, click URL, contains, and then what does it contain? A mail link. Well, just mouse over it, and then you see that the preview shows that every well, actually this will prompt actually it will open up my mail client. In this case is Outlook, but you see that it starts with mail to. So very simple, mail to, and that is our trigger. Is there anything else? I don't know. In this sense, let's see if there are any call to action that I want to track. Here, for example, there is another check availability button. However, there is no need to create another one because it's the same URL. All right, so it's the same click URL that will trigger the tag, and therefore there is no need. Like in this case, if you offer, now in this case, they just don't point anywhere, it's just a demo tel, but if you have, for example, offers, so like an offer section or a packages section, that points again to the IBE, then you might want to track them too. So that is how it works. And yeah, let's maybe make another quick test by simply tracking, for example, the telephone number we said. So you see here preview mode, and we have 7 events loaded. All right, so let's see what happens when I click on this. You see here it opens, it prompts me Skype automatically, but I can close it now. Let's see in preview mode. Here I have an event, which is a link click, and here is my event popping up with the values that I told them, with the category click and action phone, and in here click phone. So Google Analytics account in the real-time section, event category click and event action phone. You see now everything is tracking, and same principle. I mean, now I just show you how to set up every custom reports in Analytics and in Data Studio based on those specific values. All right, so the specific values of the check availability button, but you can use this exact same process to create any call to action, any click-through rate, any possible call to action, considering that that is exactly what we want people to do when land on a website. That is what you might want to track, and then the way you structured your reporting is totally up to you. I think this is really it. It was a long tutorial. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you didn't fall asleep. But if you are into data, I guess this is pretty much useful. I hope, at least. So yeah, let me know what you think about it. And if you have any questions, just shoot me a message. And yeah, take care and goodbye.